Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I'm going to tell you whether you should in-house or just outsource your cold email efforts. So let's get into it. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Why would I listen to someone who owns a cold email lead generation agency tell me whether I should in-house it or not? Now, the honest answer is because if you fall under the category of people who I don't think should outsource cold email, we wouldn't want to work with you anyways because you shouldn't outsource cold email, right? So me making this video, I can only really be helping you because if it doesn't make sense for you to outsource it, it doesn't make sense for us to work together, and I can just save both of us our time, okay? Now let's get into it. Now, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, does cold email make sense at all? Now, before deciding whether it would be better to in-house something or outsource something, let's discuss whether it makes sense for you to even consider it at all. Okay, now here are a couple of examples of situations where you shouldn't do cold email. For starters, if you sell business to consumer, so B2C, cold email is only legal in a B2B setting. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, because of the way that the laws are set up, you can only do cold email, B2B. You cannot do it B2C. The next thing is if your total addressable market is small. Now, if you are targeting, say, the CEOs of the Fortune 500, again, not to say cold email won't work, but automated cold email won't work. And that's the type of cold email that we're talking about, right? So again, if you are contacting the Fortune 500 where your TAM is under 5,000, it's honestly not even going to make sense. Okay. The next thing is if the audience that you're targeting doesn't have an online presence. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, all of these big data providers like ZoomInfo, Apollo, Lusha, Seamless, all of them get all of their data that they have, it's from LinkedIn. And the idea is pretty simple. If the type of person you're working with isn't on LinkedIn, these data providers aren't going to have their data and you can't contact them, okay? Which is obviously a problem. Now, if the people you're contacting are laundromats or dog walkers, these people are not going to have LinkedIn, right? Obviously, laundromats don't have LinkedIn, right? So if you're contacting them, cold email is probably not the best way to do it, okay? Now, the next thing is if you sell B2 solopreneur. Now, we all know B2B, we all know B2C, but there's this in between, which is kind of like B2 solopreneur. That's kind of like independent contractors who have, on paper it's a business, but in reality, just them, right? Now, the one caveat here I would say is real estate agents. A lot of real estate agents are independent contractors. You can actually get some pretty good results contacting real estate agents and selling them something. But again, it's really not optimal. Cold email is really made for B2B, not so much B2 solopreneur where it's kind of B2C, kind of B2B. I would recommend that if you're going to do cold email and you want the highest probability of it working, go after B2B, okay? Now, the next thing is, does it make enough sense for you to outsource it, right? Now, I'm going to assume that if you're still watching this video, you've probably, you're not fitting into any of the things we just talked about, which means that yes, cold email can physically work for you, okay? Now, even if you do sell B2B, you do have a large TAM and your audience has a social presence, that doesn't necessarily mean you should do cold email, okay? Now, to understand whether cold email makes sense for you, you need to look at a couple of key variables. Now, for starters is average ticket price, average retention, and sales cycle. Okay, those are the three most common variables. Now, let's say that, hypothetically speaking, you have a software product that is $500 a month and you want to book demos for that software product. Let's say that people will stick around for roughly 6 months and your sales cycle is roughly 1 month, right? Now, if you're able to close 2 to 4 of these deals per month, just as a safe estimate, that means that your upfront cash collected is going to be roughly $1,000 to $2,000 and your non-contracted revenue is going to be $6,000 to $12,000, right? Now, in a situation like this, it would make sense for you to run cold email, but only on your own. It wouldn't really make sense to hire an agency. Once you figure out what works, then you can scale, get more demos, and get more revenue, and potentially then it makes sense to have an agency. But then again, at that point, the hard part is already figured out, and it wouldn't really make sense for you to hire one, right? Hey guys, we're gonna get right back to the video in just a minute. But real quick, do you want a done-for-you cold email lead generation solution that is able to consistently book you meetings with your ideal buyers? We just helped Morty from Your Business Now book over 30 clients in just 2 months of working together, and Avi from Daily Dose of Data Science get over 40 calls in our first 10 days of sending cold email. Now, if you guys want a consistent flow of buyers on your calendar, you can book a meeting with me and my team in the description below. Okay, talk soon. But in the start, again, you need to consider your profit margins, you need to consider your sales cycles, you need to consider the possibility of someone not sticking around, right? So it's going to be very hard for you to justify hiring a cold email agency when that's what your deal looks like, okay? Now, let's say that on the converse, you sell a high ticket B2B service that's priced at $5,000, hypothetically speaking, right? And people usually stay for at least 6 months. Now, that means that your upfront cash collected is now $5,000 and your uncontracted revenue is another $30,000, right? Now, let's say that your sales cycle is still a month. Now, justifying cold email is going to be a lot easier because you can afford the cost of infrastructure and the cost to have an agency manage the full system for you, and you'd still be making a profit if you just sign one client, right? On your upfront cash collected, not even on like the uncontracted revenue, right? Which obviously makes it a lot easier to say yes to. The difference between the two different offers is really just the upfront cash collected, okay? Now, ideally, if you're gonna do cold email, you should be selling a high ticket service because that's gonna allow you to very easily liquidate the cost to run the system, whether you're doing it on your own or whether you have an agency doing it for you. Regardless, you'd be able to liquidate it, right? Now, again, that's not the only thing you should look for because, again, you should also consider something like your average sales cycle, right? Because if you have one of those very long sales cycles, like, a lot of enterprise companies have, that's like 12 to 18 months, then, again, hiring a cold email agency probably isn't the best idea because you're going to be out tens of thousands of dollars before you see an actual cash ROI. And again, that's very risky. And the best bet here would probably be to do like an account-based approach where you have an actual like SDR, or maybe you're the SDR doing account-based marketing. So you're targeting specific people at specific companies with personalized messages. Because again, your main goal there is going to be to just shorten down that sales cycle and get as many people through the door as possible rather than doing a broad approach like this, okay? Now, again, what I'm describing might seem like common sense. You obviously want to make a positive ROI, but the thing is cold email is not like paid ads where you can just spend more and it'll just start working at one point or another, right? It's not like you can just, throw more money at it and that solves the problem. If cold email doesn't fundamentally make sense for your business, it's not going to work if you throw more money at it, okay? Now, the ideal situation for someone who runs cold email would be you sell B2B, you sell a high ticket service that's priced between $2,000 to $10,000 a month. You have a defined ideal client profile who you are aware of. You sell to businesses that have an online presence, example like e-commerce, agencies, SaaS, public companies, large companies, just companies that are on the internet. Your sales cycle is max 1 to 2 months. And you have at least 20,000 people in your total addressable market. That's what the ideal situation would look like, if you were looking to do cold email, okay? Now, if you meet the criteria, now the final question, should you outsource? Now, let's say you do meet the ideal criteria, and now you're seriously considering giving cold email a try. Should you outsource it or should you keep it in-house? Now, again, it's a nuanced question because it depends on where you are as a business. If you already are consistently converting cold traffic into paying clients and you have an offer that's optimized for cold leads and you have message market fit plus product market fit, honestly, just in-house it, right? If you've already figured out how to profitably run ads or how to profitably run, whatever other outbound traffic that you have going on, then you can probably just figure out cold email, just retouch the messaging and you'll be fine, okay? Now, on the other hand, if you've relied on referrals and inbound leads so far and you have a good offer, but you're not sure if it's optimal for cold traffic and you know what your prospects want, but you wouldn't necessarily say that you have message market fit, that's when working with an agency could be potentially very lucrative. And again, I don't want this video to come off as if I'm telling you guys you have to work with us. Again, you don't have to work with us. There's plenty of lead generation agencies out there. But if there is a specific situation where I would say you are an ideal client profile, on behalf of my own lead generation agency and the lead generation agencies of others, I can say that this would be the scenario, okay? This is the most prime person for a lead generation agency to work with, okay? And that would be the perfect opportunity. Now, one of the big benefits of working with an agency on cold email is that you can actually converse and work together to figure out what is a good offer, right? I've made plenty of videos about this in the past. This is single-handedly the most important part. Again, deliverability, what tools to use, whatever, those things are important, but they're not as important as the offer, right? And that's one of the biggest things of working with an agency. You guys can work together on that, okay? Now, something worth considering. If you've ever set up a cold email system in the past, you know that there is quite a learning curve, right? Now you need to figure out deliverability, public versus email or public versus private email senders. You need to figure out email account sellers, script writing, lead scraping, verification, and all the tech that comes along with it. Okay. Now, it's very realistic that you could find this information online because it is readily available. There's plenty of content. You can even find the majority of it on my YouTube channel for completely free, right? If time was of the essence, you could even join Lead Academy, which is like, what, $200 a month, and you have a bunch of different content in there that's going to give you definitive answers to how to do everything, right? But regardless, right, if you want to save as much time as possible and you just want this done, then again, you might want to consider that, especially if you're not a tech guy, right? Because there's a little bit of tech involved. You might want to consider giving an agency a go. And again, it doesn't have to be us, but I can guarantee you'd have a good time if it was with us. But point is most agencies will also offer build and release systems. So if you like the idea of owning the system, but you don't like the idea of building it yourself, a lot of agencies do offer build and release systems, which is basically you pay one time, they set up a system for you, and then they hand it off, right? That could be a potential in between that you consider. Okay, so really to summarize, what I would say is the best scenario is if you fit this criteria of business owner, which we talked about right here. You sell B2B, you sell a high ticket service, you have a defined ICP, you sell to businesses with an online presence, your sales cycle is 1 to 2 months, and you have 20,000 plus people in your TAM. And then additionally, if you are currently relying on referrals, but you have inbound leads, you have a good offer, but you're not sure if it's optimized for cold traffic. And last but not least, you know what your prospects want, but you wouldn't say you have message market fit. That's when I would say, consider outsourcing cold email. So to end off the video, if you do want to outsource cold email and that is something that you want to do, I would be very appreciative if you give our agency a consideration. Again, just book a call. The link will be in the description. We'll just do a quick outbound audit, see if it even makes sense for us to work together. Worst case scenario, you just get some free advice. So either way, you're coming out on top. And just a heads up, if your business is making under $500K a year, we can't help you. If you don't sell B2B, we can't help you. If you sell anything to do with OnlyFans or adult content, we won't help you. And our payment structure is a fixed retainer. We don't do pay-per-call. We don't do any of those things. So, if that's what you're interested in, we cannot help you. Okay. So anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you have a little bit of a better idea on whether you should in-house it or outsource it. But with that being said, I hope to see some of you on a call. And until next time.